The alien Huntress tracked her human target, but he'd JPG Karajara's footsteps echoed through the empty forest, each step a testament to the precision with which she pursued her target. Her tall, lithe figure moved with an almost predatory grace, the sharpness of her senses making her aware of every rustle in the underbrush, every shift in the air. She had been trained to hunt, to track, and to kill, and now her target was a human. A species many considered inferior, but one whose reputation had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. This human, Derek Winters, was not just any man. He was a survivor, a man who had outsmarted the fiercest hunters, including those of her own kind. Kara's people, the Zalroth, were known for their advanced technology, their unyielding discipline, and their deadly efficiency. They had once been the rulers of vast stretches of space, and their reputation for merciless hunts made them feared across the galaxy. Yet for all their power, they had never faced a human quite like Derek. Her mission was clear: capture him, bring him back alive. But as she drew closer to the settlement where her target was last seen, doubts began to creep into her mind. She had hunted beings across countless worlds, but the humans were different. They were unpredictable, reckless, and stubborn. Derek had become a legend in the eyes of many, not for any grand conquest or battle, but for his uncanny ability to survive against overwhelming odds. Her mind was sharp, but her thoughts wandered as the dense trees of the forest grew denser, the shadows longer. What would he be like? She thought. Is he truly as dangerous as the stories say? Her ship had landed several miles from the small human settlement, and she had been following his trail for hours now. The signs were subtle, a displaced rock here, a broken branch there. But to Kara, these were like beacons. She could see what others could not. She could feel the presence of her target. As she crouched beside a fallen log to rest, she ran her fingers through her dark hair, tying it back tightly. The cool evening air of the alien planet brushed against her skin, the scent of distant flowers mixing with the earthy smell of damp soil. She wasn't just hunting this human, she was trying to understand him. There was more to this mission than her commanders had let on. She had been told nothing about why Derek was so important, only that his capture was necessary for the future of the Zalroth. The moment she had been waiting for came when she found the remains of a small camp. The fire had long since burned out, but the ashes were still warm to the touch. A sense of anticipation surged through Kara's chest, her instincts telling her that Derek was close. She could feel it. Moving silently, Kara advanced, crouching low to the ground. She was a shadow in the night, her footsteps barely making a sound as she closed in on the small cabin ahead. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with the thrill of the hunt. She had hunted across many planets, but this human was different. There was something about him that made her feel uncertain, and then just as she reached the edge of the cabin's clearing, a voice broke through the silence. "You're close!" Kara froze. She hadn't heard him approach. She hadn't sensed him at all. Slowly, she turned to face the voice, her hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at her side. Standing there, leaning casually against the cabin's wooden frame, was Derek Winters. He wasn't the picture of fear that Kara had expected. Instead, his expression was calm, almost amused. "You're quite the tracker," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "But you should know I've been expecting you." Kara's mind raced. "How did he know? You've been watching me, haven't you?" Derek continued. "The question is, why?" Kara remained silent, her eyes narrowing. This human was bold, much bolder than she had anticipated. He was the one being hunted, and yet he was standing there, speaking to her as if they were old friends. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," Kara finally said, her voice cold and firm. "I'm not here to talk, I'm here to complete my mission." Derek took a step forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "And what if I told you that your mission was based on a lie?" Kara's breath caught in her throat. She had heard rumors, whispers even, that there was more to this human than anyone knew. But hearing it from his own lips, he was daring to challenge everything she had been taught, everything she believed in. "A lie?" Kara asked, her voice low and filled with suspicion. "You think you're in a position to tell me what's true and what is?" Derek didn't flinch. He stepped forward once more, this time with purpose, closing the distance between them. Kara instinctively shifted her weight, ready to react at the slightest provocation. But Derek's calm demeanor only deepened her unease. "You're right," he said with a shrug. "I'm not in a position to tell you anything, but you should know I didn't ask for this. I didn't choose to be your target, And I certainly didn't choose the fate that's been thrust upon me. Kara's hand tightened on her weapon, but she didn't draw it. This was not the confrontation she had expected. She had been sent to capture a man, not to listen to his complaints or explanations. Then why? Kara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why are you running? What makes you so important? Derek's eyes softened for a brief moment, as if deciding whether to trust her. And then, just as quickly, the hardness returned. Because the galaxy is about to burn, and I'm the only one who can stop it. Kara stared at him, trying to process his words. The idea was absurd. Humans had always been seen as insignificant in the grand scheme of things, no more than a nuisance to be dealt with. Yet here he was, claiming to be the key to preventing a galaxy-wide war. You think I'll believe that? Kara said, disbelief lacing her tone. You're nothing but a human. What can you possibly do to stop this? Derek's gaze darkened. I can do what the Zalroth can't, stop the war before it starts, but I need your help or we're all doomed. Kara felt a surge of emotions she couldn't quite identify. The Huntress who had never doubted her orders, the warrior who had always followed her people's commands without question, was now facing a dilemma she never expected. Her mission was clear: capture Derek Winters. But for the first time in her life, Kara wondered if she had been wrong all along. Derek took a step back, his eyes still locked on Kara's. There was a calmness to his demeanor that only seemed to intensify the uncertainty in Kara. She had never expected her mission to take such an unexpected turn. She was here to hunt a human, a man who had been marked as a threat, yet in front of her stood someone who didn't fit the narrative she had been given. Derek was not afraid, nor was he desperate. Instead, he appeared to be waiting, as if he knew something she didn't. You're not like the others, Kara said, her voice tinged with suspicion. Her instincts told her to remain cautious, but there was something about Derek that made it difficult to simply dismiss him as just another target. Derek's lips curved into a small smile. I told you, I've been expecting you. He motioned toward the forest beyond the cabin. I don't think you came here just to capture me. There's more at stake than you realize. Kara's grip tightened on her weapon, but she did not raise it. And what would you know about what's at stake? She asked, her voice cold and sharp. You're just a human. Derek didn't flinch. Maybe, but sometimes being just a human is exactly what the galaxy needs. You of all people should understand that. Kara narrowed her eyes. She had heard the whispers, the rumors about Derek Winters, the human who had survived countless encounters with deadly beings and had managed to thwart even the most sophisticated military operations. There were stories about him being more than just a survivor. Some claimed he had powers beyond what humans should possess. But these were just stories, rumors spread by those who didn't fully understand the true nature of the humans. Still, there was something undeniably different about him, and that difference made Kara uneasy. Why should I believe anything you say? Kara asked. Her voice was steady, but her mind was racing. I was sent here with one goal: to capture you. That's all that matters. Derek looked at her for a moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. You were sent here to capture a man, Kara, but what if I told you that I'm not the enemy? What if the real threat is the one who sent you here? The words struck her like a physical blow. She had not expected Derek to turn the tables like this. Her entire mission was based on the premise that she was right, that she had to capture him to protect her people. And yet his words made her question everything. The ones who gave you your orders, Derek continued, his voice steady and firm. Do you trust them? Kara hesitated, her mind swirling with thoughts. She had always trusted her people. The Zalroth had taught her to follow orders without question. They were the strongest, the most disciplined, and they had built their empire through unyielding loyalty to their cause. But Derek's words planted a seed of doubt in her. Could the ones who had sent her here be wrong? What are you trying to say? Kara asked, though she already knew the answer. She was afraid of it. I'm saying, Derek replied, his voice lower now, that you've been lied to. The war that's coming, it's not something you can stop with force. It's something much bigger than that. And if you don't listen to me, we're all going to pay the price. Kara studied him for a long moment, her mind racing as she weighed his words. Could he be telling the truth? Could her mission be based on false information? Her training told her to ignore the doubts, to ignore the questions, and to follow her orders. But the more she looked at Derek, the more she saw a man who wasn't just trying to save himself. He was trying to save them all. Why should I trust you? She asked again, the question coming out quieter than before. Derek stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Because you have no choice, Kara's pulse quickened. She had spent years training to become a weapon, to trust in her strength, and to follow orders without hesitation. But now, standing in front of Derek, those lessons felt meaningless. For the first time, she was faced with the possibility that everything she had known might be wrong. "You're asking me to betray my people," Kara said, her voice thick with disbelief. "To go against everything I've been taught." Derek's expression softened. "I'm asking you to think for yourself. Look at the situation objectively. You're a hunter, Kara. You know how to recognize when something is off. And right now, everything about this mission feels wrong." Kara stepped back, trying to process his words. There had to be a reason why she had been sent here. The Zalroth never made mistakes. They were too precise, too calculated, yet here was Derek, a human, telling her that everything she knew was a lie. Could she trust him? Could she afford not to? "I didn't ask for this," Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't ask for the war, and I didn't ask to be hunted, but I'm trying to stop it, and I can't do it alone." The vulnerability in his voice made something shift inside Kara. She had always seen her mission as black and white: capture the target, complete the job. But now the lines were blurring. Derek was not just a target. He was someone who seemed to have a purpose, a cause that went beyond mere survival. Kara turned away from him, her eyes scanning the horizon. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest. She could still carry out her mission, take him back to the Zalroth, and never look back. It would be easy, like all the other hunts she had completed. But this time the choice felt different. "I need time," Kara said, her voice strained. "I need to think." Derek nodded as if he had expected this. "Take all the time you need, but know this: the war is coming, and it's not something we can outrun. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to stop." Kara stood there for a long moment, the silence between them stretching out. Her mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts and emotions. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure of what was right or wrong. Her loyalty to her people was being tested, but so was her sense of justice. "I'll think about it," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "But I won't promise anything." Derek's smile was small but sincere. "I never expected you to." As Kara turned to walk away, she couldn't help but feel that her life had just changed forever. The hunt had started as a simple mission, but now it had become something far more complicated. What she had once seen as a clear path was now a tangled web of choices, and for the first time she didn't know which way to go. The truth was, she had never been prepared for this. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Kara could not shake the words Derek had spoken. The quiet, lingering doubt had taken root deep within her, and now she was questioning everything she had known. She had always been certain of her path, the clear lines that separated right from wrong, the mission from the target. But now those lines were becoming blurred. Kara spent her time in the forest, carefully observing Derek's movements. He was a man of action, not words. Each day he worked tirelessly, gathering supplies and setting up defenses in case they were attacked. He had a calm determination, as if he knew something the rest of them did not. She watched him from the shadows, trying to understand him. Was he truly trying to stop the war, or was he simply trying to save himself? The longer she watched, the more she began to wonder if there was more to him than she had initially thought. Derek was not like any human she had encountered before. He was resourceful, clever, and determined. But more than that, he was driven by something greater than survival. He believed in a cause, in a future where things could be different. And as much as she hated to admit it, Kara couldn't help but feel drawn to that cause. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon when she returned to the small cabin. Derek was standing outside, staring at the sky as if waiting for something. Kara approached him slowly, her footsteps barely making a sound. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, his eyes meeting hers. "You've been watching me," he said, his voice calm but not accusatory. "Are you ready to talk?" Kara hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I don't know what to believe anymore. I came here to capture you, to bring you back to the Zalroth, but now I'm not so sure." Derek's gaze softened and he took a step toward her. "I understand. I never expected you to make a decision right away. But you should know, Kara, that the war is already in motion. It's not something we can avoid if we don't act fast." Kara clenched her fists at her sides, feeling the weight of his words. The Zalroth had always been the ones in control, the ones who dictated the flow of the galaxy. To question their authority, to even consider that they might be wrong, felt like a betrayal. Yet Derek's words stirred something deep within her, a sense of unease that she could not ignore. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "I've been trained to see humans as enemies, to hunt them down without hesitation." Derek nodded slowly, understanding. "I know what you've been taught. I know what you've been told. But what if everything you've been taught is a lie? What if the real enemy is the one who controls the narrative, the one who has been pulling the strings all along?" The idea made Kara's head spin. She had never once questioned the motives of her people. The Zalroth had always been the ones who protected the galaxy, the ones who kept the peace. But what if they were not the protectors? What if they were the ones who were causing the chaos, the ones who had set the galaxy on a path to destruction? "I can't just walk away from everything I've known," Kara said, her voice low. "I don't know if I can be the one to stop it, to go against my people. I was trained to hunt, to follow orders, that's all I know." Derek stepped closer, his expression softening. "And I was trained to fight, to survive. But I've learned that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight inside ourselves." Kara looked into his eyes, and for the first time she saw the man behind the legend. The survivor, the warrior, but also the man who was struggling with the same doubts and fears that she was. She could see it in his eyes. He wasn't asking her to fight for him. He was asking her to fight for something greater. "I don't know what will happen if I trust you," Kara admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But I can't stand by and watch everything I've worked for fall apart without at least trying." Derek nodded. "Then you're not alone in this. We'll fight together, but you have to know this isn't just about stopping a war. This is about changing the future of both our peoples." Kara's heart raced as she considered his words. For the first time in her life, she felt as though she was standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, something that could change everything. She had always been a hunter, but now she was being asked to be something else, something more. "I'm not a hero," Kara said, the words heavy on her tongue. "I'm just a soldier." Derek smiled, a small, reassuring smile. "Sometimes soldiers become heroes when they make the right choice." For a moment, there was a silence between them. Kara could feel the weight of the decision before her. Her instincts told her to walk away, to return to the Zalroth and complete her mission. But her heart told her something different. It told her that there was more at stake than just her mission. There was a future she could shape, a future where she could make a difference. "I'll help you," Kara finally said, her voice steady now. "But we do this together. I won't follow anyone else's orders, not anymore." Derek's eyes lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude. "We'll make this right, Kara, together." As the night descended around them, Kara felt a sense of clarity she had never experienced before. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. For the first time, she felt like she was fighting for something worth fighting for. And as she stood next to Derek, she knew that whatever the future held, she was ready to face it. The days after Kara's decision were filled with a tension that hung thick in the air. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for the moment when everything would either fall into place or shatter into pieces. She had chosen to stand by Derek. She had chosen to walk away from the mission she had been trained for and join him in a fight against something much larger than either of them. But now, the question loomed. Could they truly stop what was coming? Kara spent her time with Derek, learning more about his past and the plans he had set in motion to stop the war. He was a man who had lived a life of survival, never truly settling down or trusting anyone. But now, something had changed. He had found a cause worth fighting for, and that cause required more than just his strength. It required the help of someone who understood strategy, someone who had been trained for battle in ways Derek never could be. Together, they worked through the nights, strategizing and planning. Kara's mind, once focused solely on the hunt, was now engaged in something completely different. She found herself analyzing tactics, considering the bigger picture, and questioning everything she had once believed in. Derek was right about one thing: the war wasn't just about fighting battles. It was about understanding the true nature of power and who controlled it. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Kara asked one evening as they sat by the fire. She had been thinking about her decision to help him, about the risks they were taking. "What if the Zalroth are right? What if we're the ones who are wrong?" Derek glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "I used to wonder that, but the more I learned, the more I realized that the truth isn't always what we're told. Sometimes the people in power manipulate the truth to keep control. We've been lied to, Kara." And now we have a chance to stop them before they destroy everything. Kara stared into the fire, the crackling flames casting dancing shadows across her face. I've always been taught that loyalty to the Zalroth comes before everything else. I never questioned that, her voice softened. But now, I'm not so sure. Derek's eyes softened. You're not alone in that feeling. It's hard to break away from what you've been taught, but sometimes doing the right thing means questioning everything. The Zalroth might not be the protectors they claim to be. Kara nodded, but the weight of her thoughts still weighed heavily on her shoulders. She had been raised to believe in the superiority of her people, to trust that they were always in the right. Now, as she worked alongside Derek, she saw that there was more at stake than just loyalty. There was a truth buried beneath layers of deception, and if she was going to help Derek, she had to find a way to uncover it. Their alliance wasn't easy. Trust wasn't something that could be built overnight, especially between two people who had spent their lives on opposite sides. But despite the tension, Kara found herself growing to respect Derek more and more each day. He was more than just a man trying to escape his past. He was someone who had seen the darker side of the galaxy, and yet he still believed in the possibility of a better future. One evening, as they sat around their makeshift camp, a signal came through on Derek's communicator. Kara tensed, her hand instinctively going to the weapon at her side. Derek glanced at her, his expression calm but alert. "It's from my contact," he said, pressing a button on the device to open the transmission. The voice on the other end was crackling with static, but Kara could still make out the words. "Derek, it's time. The Zalroth are moving faster than we anticipated. They've already started mobilizing their forces. You need to act now." Derek's face hardened as he listened. "I know, we're ready." Kara looked at him, her heart pounding. "What does this mean? Are they coming for us?" "They've already started," Derek said. "The Zalroth have set their sights on me, and they won't stop until they've brought me back, dead or alive." "We don't have much time." Kara's mind raced. She had known this day would come, but hearing it from Derek made it all feel so real. The Zalroth were already on the move, and their mission was now a matter of survival. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "We need to move fast," Derek replied, his tone serious. "We're going to strike at the heart of their operation. If we can hit them where it hurts, we can stop them before they get any further." Kara nodded, her mind already working through the possibilities. This was it. This was the moment where everything would either succeed or fail. There would be no turning back. The next few days were a blur of preparation and planning. Kara and Derek worked side by side, refining their strategy, gathering their resources, and making sure every detail was accounted for. Kara found herself doing things she had never imagined, sabotaging communication lines, sneaking through enemy territory, and working alongside Derek in ways she never thought possible. As they moved closer to the Zalroth's command center, the tension between them grew. There was no more room for doubts or second-guessing. Their mission had reached a critical point. They had to act now or risk losing everything. One night, as they approached the enemy base, Kara found herself standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out over the vast landscape. The wind tugged at her hair, and for a moment she allowed herself to think about what they were about to do. The odds were stacked against them. The Zalroth were powerful, and they had every advantage. But Kara had never been one to back down from a challenge. And now, with Derek at her side, she knew that they could make a difference. "We're almost there," Derek said, his voice low but filled with determination. "This is our shot." Kara turned to face him, her expression resolute. "I know, let's make it count." With that, they moved forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The battle was about to begin, and Kara knew that the outcome would shape the future of the galaxy. There would be no more hiding, no more running. This was their moment. The war was coming, and Kara was no longer just a soldier. She was a part of something bigger, something that could change the galaxy forever. The night was cold, and the stars above seemed to watch in silence as Kara and Derek moved through the dense forest. The enemy base was ahead, its walls looming in the distance like a silent giant waiting to crush anything that came too close. Kara's heart beat heavily in her chest as they crept forward, their steps muffled by the soft earth beneath them. The weight of the mission pressed on her shoulders, but she had made her choice. She would no longer be the hunter. She would be the one who fought for a future where the galaxy wasn't enslaved by power-hungry forces. Derek was beside her, his quiet focus sharpening the resolve within her. She glanced at him as they moved, his face set with determination. The same determination she had seen in his eyes since the moment they had first met. There was no going back now. She was in this fight not as a soldier of the Zalroth, but as someone who believed in the cause they were both fighting for. The plan was simple, but that didn't mean it would be easy. They would infiltrate the Zalroth base, destroy the communication systems, and disrupt their command center. If they succeeded, they could slow the war's progress, buying the galaxy time to find a peaceful resolution. If they failed, it would mean their lives, and the lives of countless others would be lost. As they reached the outskirts of the base, Derek motioned for her to stop. He was scanning the area, his eyes sharp as ever. Kara followed his gaze, watching for any signs of movement. They had to be careful. The Zalroth were known for their advanced surveillance systems. One mistake could alert the entire base to their presence. Derek crouched low, signaling for Kara to do the same. They were close now, within range of the outer defenses. The walls of the base were tall and reinforced, with armed guards patrolling along the perimeter. It would be impossible to slip past unnoticed. "We need to take out the guards first," Derek whispered. "I'll disable the sensors on the east side. You cover the west." Kara nodded. She had trained for situations like this, but the stakes had never been this high. The guards were trained professionals, not the kind of opponents she had faced before. But with Derek's plan and her skills, they stood a chance. As Derek moved to the east, Kara crept along the western edge of the base. She knew that once the guards were dealt with, the real challenge would begin. They had to get inside, locate the communication hub, and destroy it. Time was their enemy. Every moment they spent outside the base was one more moment the Zalroth had to respond. Kara's heart pounded as she moved swiftly between shadows, her senses alert. She could hear the faint sounds of the guards' footsteps, their voices echoing as they spoke in low tones. She waited for the perfect moment, watching as a guard passed by just a few feet from her position. With a fluid movement, she sprang into action, catching him off guard. Her hand clamped over his mouth, silencing his shout before it could escape. With one quick strike, he collapsed, unconscious. Kara dragged him into the shadows and quickly checked for any signs of a radio or communicator. Satisfied that he had nothing on him, she left him where he lay and moved deeper into the base's perimeter. Her body was tense, but her mind was sharp. There was no room for mistakes. She could hear Derek's voice faintly in her earpiece, confirming that the east side was clear. "Now or never," Derek said, his voice steady. Kara took a deep breath, then signaled back to him. It was time. The two of them met at the base of a small, unguarded entrance. Kara used her knife to cut through the security seal, and in moments the door was open. They slipped inside, moving quickly but quietly. The air inside the base was thick with the smell of machinery and metal. The walls were cold, and the fluorescent lights above flickered as they moved through the corridors. They followed the map Derek had memorized, heading straight for the heart of the base, the command center. The closer they got, the more the base seemed to come alive with activity. Kara's heart raced as she listened for any sound that might signal the arrival of reinforcements. But for now, they were alone. They reached a locked door, and Derek quickly set to work on the security panel. "It'll take a minute," he whispered, his fingers moving quickly over the keypad. Kara stood guard, her eyes scanning the hallway for any signs of movement. She could hear footsteps approaching, and her heart skipped a beat. She tensed, ready to move at a moment's notice. "Almost there," Derek muttered under his breath, his fingers flying across the panel. Finally, with a soft click, the door slid open. They slipped inside the command center, and Kara's eyes immediately locked on the control panels ahead. She could see the communication systems humming with life, and her pulse quickened. This was it. They had made it. "Get to the console," Derek said, his voice firm. "I'll plant the charges." Kara moved quickly, sliding into the seat at the main terminal. She was no expert on the Zalroth systems, but she knew enough to disable their communications. Her fingers flew over the keys as she hacked into the network, disabling the firewalls and security systems. She could feel the pressure mounting with each second. If they failed, it would be the end of everything. She glanced up at Derek, who was placing explosives near the base's main control panel. He glanced at her, nodding silently. They were almost there. With one final command, Kara disabled the communication systems. The lights flickered, and the entire base seemed to shudder as the system went down. Kara could hear the alarms begin to blare in the distance, and she knew they had only moments before the Zalroth realized what had happened. "Time to go," Derek said, his voice urgent. Kara stood, grabbing her weapon and heading for the door. They had to leave quickly. There was no more time to waste. As they raced back through the corridors, the sounds of approaching guards filled the air. Kara's heart beat faster as she pushed herself harder, knowing that every second counted. They reached the exit, but as Kara stepped out into the night, she heard the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps behind them. She spun around just as a group of Zalroth soldiers emerged from the shadows. There was no time to fight. They had to move. Derek grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the forest. "This way," he shouted. They ran as fast as they could, the sound of the soldiers' footsteps growing louder behind them. Kara's breath came in short, ragged gasps, but she refused to slow down. They had to make it out. They had to survive. The forest was dense, the trees thick with shadows, but they kept running, not looking back. As they reached the clearing, Derek turned to her, his face tense with determination. "Keep going, we're almost there." And then, just as the Zalroth soldiers closed in, Derek set off the charges they had planted earlier. The explosion rang out behind them, a deafening sound that shook the ground beneath their feet. The trees around them trembled, and Kara felt the blast wave hit her, pushing her forward. She stumbled, but Derek was there, pulling her up. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice urgent. "Move!" They pushed through the forest, running with everything they had left. The sounds of the explosion still rang in their ears, but they couldn't stop. Not now. As they emerged from the trees, the ship was waiting for them. Derek's ship. Kara knew that this was the moment that would change everything. She looked at Derek, her breath coming in heavy gasps, but her eyes were clear. "We did it," she said, the words filling her with a sense of relief. "We actually did it." Derek nodded, his face weary but resolute. "This is just the beginning. There's more to come." And as they climbed aboard the ship, Kara knew that the fight was far from over. But for the first time, she felt a sense of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, they could change the galaxy.